I love The Legend of Zelda, more than most things in my life as a matter of fact. It's probably behind my wife, my family, and the Yankees. But today, I was thinking about Link's hands. So that's what I'm going to talk about. First, let's go back to February of 1986, 5 months after the release of Nintendo's first smash hit on the NES, Super Mario Bros. Shigeru Miyamoto had another gem slated to release in the Hyrule Fantasy, or as it's known in America, The Legend of Zelda. This top-down, open-world adventure game threw players into the world of Hyrule for the first time, and has them set out to explore what at the time was one of the most expansive worlds gamers had ever seen. Playing as Link, players set out to find different items used to traverse the land and complete challenges set within the 8 labyrinths. Within said labyrinths, the 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom can be found, which can then be used to rescue the titular character Princess Zelda and defeat the game's main antagonist, the swine-like Ganon. Since first defeating Ganon nearly 40 years ago at this point, the Zelda series has continued to grow and prosper. Its releases are full of iconic imagery like the Triforce or the Blade of Evil's Bane, in addition to epic scenes ranging from showdowns with massive beasts to horseback races through vast fields. Among all of these recurring tropes we have seen over dozens of entries in the franchise, one that's always stood out to me, especially when I was a child, was the game's protagonist, Link. Sure, his green tunic and floppy hat are often instantly recognizable, but my favorite aspect of the silent hero was his handedness. That's right, when I was 5 years old, I was playing The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and having a ball as any kid with a GameCube likely did. But one day my appreciation for this already amazing game grew immensely when my father pointed out to me that Link swung the hero's sword with his left hand, just as I would. This detail may seem insignificant to most, but as a young southpaw who struggled to learn most things that dealt with one's dexterousness as I had no one to show me from the same side as myself, this was really remarkable. I'd only met a few other people who were also left-handed, and as a kindergartner, my favorite video game character was also left-handed, and that instilled an amount of pride in me that isn't matched by much else, despite how small it may seem to all of you. Now, I'm not trying to say being left-handed is a struggle or that it's made my life more difficult or anything, not even close. Yet there are a plethora of the slightest inconveniences I would say have led to an unspoken bond I have with anybody else who has ink smudged on the edge of their left hand underneath their pinky. In case you were unaware, about 90% of the world's population is right-handed, so 1 in 10 shouldn't seem like anything too crazy. But I feel meeting another southpaw is somewhat special, especially when I was younger because, you know, they're like me! As far as why I'm left-handed, or why anyone may be for that matter, I have no clue, and a lot of researchers and geneticists seem to share this same sentiment. It may have something to do with genetics, but there's no proof on it yet. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the boy in green with the elf ears. Personally, my first Zelda game was The Wind Waker, and each of the 8 titles that preceded it, our protagonist was a left-handed hero named Link. And there's a reason I didn't mention the CDI games. I don't want to talk about it. You go stop right now. I'll get back to you later. You probably aren't wondering why Link's left-handed, but I'm gonna tell you anyways, because the answer's actually pretty simple. The famed longtime game designer and one of the faces of Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto, who created Mario, Donkey Kong, Captain Olimar, and none other than Link himself, is left-handed. So naturally, he wanted to represent himself a bit in this awesome character, so in turn, we received a left-handed icon. For 20 years, everything was right in the world, and Southpaws received a rare share of recognition. But that all changed when the GameCube began to fade, and the Wii rose to spotlight in 2006. If you were unaware, the Wii's basic control scheme isn't quite like that of other consoles. It relies heavily on motion controls, or as I like to call them, the bane of a Southpaw's existence. In an attempt to make games more immersive on this new console, the fine folks at Nintendo decided to take one of their biggest launch titles, The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, which was set to feature a left-handed Link, and decided to flip the entire world of Hyrule in order to change Link's dexterousness to be more easy to consume for the right-handed majority, leaving us lefties in the dust. And I don't know about any of you other Southpaws out there, but I felt neglected. Once an iconic lefty who instilled what is likely an irrational amount of pride in me, was now right-handed as the game would be too tough for the right-handed people to enjoy if he maintained his left-handedness. So in an attempt to make the game more easily consumable, the folks at Nintendo eliminated a trait of their hero that was appreciated by many Southpaws, and they alienated the very people they were nodding to initially in the process. You know, because God forbid the 90% had to be slightly uncomfortable for once, whatever. I don't care. Now, before all you right-handed folks get cranky at me in the comments saying that we need to get over it or play the GameCube version, let me drop a couple numbers on you. The Wii sold just over 100 million units. The GameCube, on the other hand, sold just over 20. If these numbers coincided with the sale of Twilight Princess, and we assumed there was literally zero overlap between the sales of the two consoles, which definitely isn't the case, then 1 in 6 people who wanted Twilight Princess would have the GameCube version. If we were to assume a 100% overlap between the sales of the two consoles, meaning that every single GameCube owner also bought a Wii, which is honestly more likely, then 1 in 5 parts of the install base of the consoles would have the choice whether or not to buy either version. But still, 80% of the install base would only have access to the Wii version. While I do believe that that's the more likely of the two scenarios, neither are a perfect science, so let's look at some actual sales figures. The original Twilight Princess sold a total of just about 10 million units between the releases on both consoles. According to the figures I could find, the Wii version accounted for about 85% of the sales of the game. This is likely due to the fact that the GameCube was at the tail end of its lifespan, and the Wii was the hot new console at the time with the shiny new Zelda available at launch, and as a 7-year-old, I personally just wanted to waggle to my heart's content. Shoot, I personally didn't even know the game was released on the GameCube until years after I initially played it on the Wii. If Nintendo could have just included the initial world and a mirror mode for righties who were uncomfortable, all of my problems would be resolved, but that's not the case, is it? I had to waggle opposite Link anytime I wanted to play the wolf game like a sad little boy. But as the following years approached, as did a new Zelda release, Phantom Hourglass was just over the horizon, and I caught a glimmer of hope as the DS titles brought back one of the favorite characteristics of one of my favorite characters, and Link was once again set to be left-handed. And sure enough, in Phantom Hourglass's direct sequel, 2009's Spirit Tracks, Link was left-handed again. At this point, I was sure right-handed Link was nothing more than a fluke or a blip on the radar. He was simply a consequence of a console overburdened by motion controls and a right-handed majority. Everything seemed right with the world. That was until Satan came back for seconds. During Nintendo's presentation at E3 2010, we got our first look at the next home console Zelda adventure, Skyward Sword. This game was slated to release a year and a half later for the Nintendo Wii, and sure enough, we saw motion controls. And I mean a ton of motion controls. And with that, you guessed it, an ambidextrous Link? What? I don't know if this was some kind of blunder or what, but you may have heard it here first. Skyward Sword Link is, for some reason, ambidextrous. Not in the sense that he could write with either hand, but in the sense that he does some things as a right-handed person would, and others from the left side. Up until writing the script for this video, I was unaware of this fact, but Link in Skyward Sword aims both the slingshot and the bow as a southpaw would. Unfortunately for me though, Nintendo seems to still mostly hate lefties though, as he swings his sword, plays the harp, tosses bombs, and a whole bunch of other stuff, all right-handed, which was still one hell of an inconvenience for lefties around the world. I mean, sure, it's pretty cool that he aims left-handed, but that literally has zero effect on the gameplay whatsoever, as aiming's strictly pointer-based and doesn't feel any more or less immersive based on which side Link is aiming from. The sword play in particular though, that kinda hurt. This time around there wasn't a GameCube version, and the motion controls were all the more prevalent, making the experience with our once strictly southpaw hero even more clunky to control from the left side. I can somewhat understand Nintendo's logic here, but I didn't like it, and frankly I still don't. But with the Wii finally reaching its end, lefties around the world shared some hope that the era of a right-handed Hylian could come to an end. Following Skyward Sword, we also saw the release of A Link Between Worlds, which featured a left-handed hero, just as nature intended. In addition to that release, a spin-off, Hyrule Warriors, was announced also featuring a southpaw Link. The rumblings of a new mainline home console Zelda began, and at E3 2014, early footage of Zelda Wii U emerged, and the nightmare continued, as Link was slated to be right-handed yet again. This was just an early trailer though, maybe it had something to do with the CG cutscene they made for the announcement trailer, but unfortunately later that year in December when Shigeru Miyamoto and Eiji Aonuma sat down to give us our first look at the gameplay of Zelda Wii U, we still saw a right-handed Link. There were very little motion controls in sight, simply gyro to aim here, not enough to warrant this change for convenience. Yet here we are with our third new home console Zelda in a row, set to feature a right-handed Link. I mean, sure, we saw the releases of Ocarina of Time 3D in 2011 just before Skyward Sword, and also Wind Waker HD and A Link Between Worlds in 2013. Even 2016's Twilight Princess HD all featured a left-handed Link. But those were just essentially remakes. I mean, I'm sorry, Low Rule Hilda fans, but it's basically just A Link to the Past. Come on. Additionally, we saw two games that were essentially spin-offs, and Hyrule Warriors and Triforce Heroes released with left-handed Links, but the biggest titles in the series were all still featuring a right-handed Link. I don't know why Zelda Wii U's protagonist was different for me. He was supposed to be left-handed, but he wasn't, and I can't understand why. Sure, I hated it when Link's left-handedness was stripped in the Wii entries, but those could have just been motion-controlled flukes with the excuse of convenience for the right-handed majority on their side. But here we are with little more than gyro for aiming and a right-handed Link. And as March of 2017 came around, as did Nintendo's next home console, the Nintendo Switch. And with it, Zelda Wii U alongside, or as you may know it, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Little did we know both of these releases would do Nintendo pretty well, seeing as the Switch has outsold even the Wii, and Breath of the Wild is running laps around all the other Zelda titles the series has seen to date as far as sales are concerned. This has resulted in the now right-handed hero being featured in two more games of his own, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. As you probably guessed it, Link didn't randomly just begin to favor the opposite side, and in both of these subsequent entries, he's also right-handed. If I take a look back, it's pretty amazing to see the majority of the titles in the Legend of Zelda franchise have featured a left-handed Link. But in case you need another reason not to play the CDI games or Link's crossbow training, I hope I may have given you one here today. But as we sit here now, I'm unsure if we'll ever get another left-handed Link on a home console. And I'm not upset at Nintendo that we haven't seen this as of late, well, maybe a little bit, but I do feel really bad for the left-handed kids in elementary school who will be given Tears of the Kingdom for their next birthday or Christmas, and won't get that special feeling that they are just like their favorite hero. If you guys actually watched this one all the way through, thank you very much for that, it's appreciated. This was just something stupid I decided to do on a whim. If you could, like and subscribe, that'd be really cool. We do a podcast every week that comes out on Monday alongside my right-handed friend Cody. I know it's cringy, whatever. But thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.